of the things that portrays success in the film business is Zach, because Zach will just have a helping hand. He makes things happen. He doesn't like say, okay, I have to have this specific title. You'll see him get credit as executive assistant, but he's so much more. And one of the things I think Zach can do, and he has done, is he'll just come in and he's so articulate. One of the things I loved sharing, and I'm going to say this when I've heard it talk before, Zach turned around and said, you know, mom, guess what? I got to write in the Producers Guild and put the words into Tom Cruise's mouth. And I think that it kind of portrays what he's done. He doesn't just look and say, okay, so I have to be a writer on a particular show. I have to be a showrunner on this show. I'm willing to jump in, make things happen. And from there, he's really catapulted where he's got over 25 credits. He's now directed, and it doesn't matter where he lives. He's just attached to Hollywood. So
that's
Zach,
right. Thanks for that introduction.
Welcome.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for being here. I know one of the things too, a lot of people don't know about you is that you're also an artist. You can see from your background.
Yes, I'm working every day on my art. Yeah, I'm having an art show in March, a big solo show at a gallery. Hopefully the world will be somewhat better by then.
What's amazing is that you not just, again, you don't just have your talent, you share your talent. So you've taught art all over, haven't you? You've taught it in numerous places.
I've taught all around the country. I've taught from age 2. I have a student actually this past year who's 102. So, it's a 100-year span. I teach people in Alzheimer's homes art. I teach, adults, teenagers, every age. And also I teach writing. So I feel like I have 2 people living inside of me, an artist and a writer.
But yet, one of the things is you are a writer, but you've done so much more. You don't just say, okay, I have to have a writing credit. You also turn around and do executive assistant. And really what you're doing is you're kind of articulating and helping them, guide them into the direction where that celebrity needs to be.
And I don't feel there's any job too small. Like I'll jump in, like you said, wherever with helping the casting people, with helping the food people, with helping whoever needs help with parking, whatever it is, I will jump in and help. And even though I was directing my first feature film in the fall, I was doing many other tasks too, renting the car and finding wardrobe for one of the actors and making sure everything was okay emotionally with people. So yeah, I'm very comfortable with a lot of different hats, and it's not about just the credit.
And, I think that's why people love working with you. And a lot of people will say, okay, come on in, stay, Kathy Griffin, you were with her for a long time, right? And
yeah, I worked on her reality show, My Life on the D-List, which was overall a great experience. And I worked on many different reality shows actually, and they were all, oh my gosh, it's another world, working in reality shows. But I climbed the ladder and I made a lot of friends along the way. It's if you want to get into the game of unscripted television, it's wide open. There's so much opportunity there. It was never my goal to get into unscripted television, but I landed there and I made the most of it.
And I think that's one of the things I wanted to talk about is, how did you get your start? I know you started with one of our speakers, long time, the agent, TV agent, right?
Well, I had a TV manager, Cherie Guitar.
Yeah, that's Cherie. I'm thinking of, sorry, manager.
Yeah. And, but prior to Cherie, who I love, by the way, I basically, I'd moved to LA from New England. I didn't know anybody. I had no rich uncle in the business. There were no guarantees. I had only a little amount of money and a lot of knowledge of the entertainment world. But I just thought I'm going to do this, you know. So I go to LA and I was working in really weird, odd jobs. I actually found a job working as my favorite actress's personal assistant, Sally Kirkland. I don't know if anyone out there knows Sally Kirkland.
Yeah.
Oh,
No
okay.
wonder you guys, I know, aren't you doing a movie with her now?
I just,
Hollywood?
so I just directed the feature film version of my life going to LA and becoming her assistant, and she stars as herself in the film. It comes out in cinemas next year. It's called Sallywood, and it's my
Yes.
first film as a writer-director. And it's a thrill that I actually wrote the story of my life in that chapter of time, which was 2002, 2003, around the time I met you and Gary.
Right.
And I was working as her assistant, which was a crazy job. And I ended up thinking a few months into that, oh my gosh, where is this headed? I want to be working in television. I don't want to be working as an actress's assistant in her house. So I called a friend of mine who I knew from back in Boston, and she had been working for Greg Sills, who's a well-known reality show producer and award show producer,
Right.
as his assistant. And I said to her, please, if you hear of anything, let me know. And she said, well, actually, there's a job interview across the hall at Hollywood Squares. They're looking for an assistant on that show. And I thought, Hollywood Squares? Well, okay, all right, I'll do it. I'll do anything. So I go into the interview and it's Henry Winkler is sitting
Yeah,
there in
yeah.
the chair.
They've all come to Sherwood Oaks too. It's kind of
Yeah.
cool.
And Henry Winkler, who would be my boss, is interviewing me with Michael Levitt, who would be my other boss. I'd be basically the assistant to two of them. And I got the job, like really right away. As soon as I walked out the door, they called me and offered me the job. And I was thrilled. I was also up for a job as a writer's assistant on the TV show Jag. Do you know that show?
Yeah, yeah, of
Yeah,
course.
and there was a spin-off show from it that was, what was the spin-off show of Jag? It was super successful. Was it NCIS? Anyway, there was a successful
Yeah,
long-running
yeah.
spin-off, and I was up for writer's assistant jobs on those shows, but those shows told me, take the job with Henry Winkler. You will love working for him. You've got
Yeah.
to work for him.
Yeah, he's
It
a
doesn't matter
sweetheart.
that it's a game show. Just do it.
Yeah.
He's the best. And he's loved throughout the whole industry. And
Yeah.
I feel like I did the right thing.
He's got a really big heart.
He really does. He was a great boss. And Michael Levitt, I learned so much from both of them. They promoted me to be a writer on their shows.
That's
You know, I
awesome.
paid my dues as an assistant, answering phones and scheduling lunches and all the things an assistant does. But I was also winning them over as I'm their assistant, earning their trust and making them laugh every day and whatever, you know, getting to be their friend. And then they gave me my first shot at writing a show, which was a network special in 2006, which was the Dynasty reunion special.
Yeah, yeah, I saw that.
The cast of Dynasty, you know, which was
Yeah.
an 80s soap that I loved. So I felt like I was on this great path that I could never have planned,
Right.
but it just, you know, life happens in its own way. And I just went with it. And I ended up working for years in non-scripted television, award shows, specials, game shows, talk shows, you name it, all sorts
Yeah.
of unusual.
So you've talked about how relationships are so key, and you've also talked about kind of how you kind of fell into unscripted TV. But one of the things I was telling people is um, unscripted TV needs writers, just not as many. And it was really interesting to hear Mark Burnett talk, who, you know, I call him the father of unscripted TV. He started with Survivor, and his approach was we need two or three writers. They come up, and then instead of having a team of 12 or 15 writers, they have a team of 12 editors, but they need 2 to 3 writers to come up with a plan. Is that right? And you might not script every word, but what you're doing is scripting a scene and scripting a story. Is that how you would?
Yes, so all unscripted television has writers, and a lot of, no matter if it's an award show, a reality show, a talk show, a game show, a children's show. The world of unscripted television is pretty broad, but there are writers on all of those shows.
Right.
Now, reality shows tend not to be guild shows, so they're a slightly different animal, but they still hire writers. And if you're looking for a job, they're still hiring writers.
Right.
When I tell people I've written for so many award shows, they just look at me and go, "What do you mean? There's writers on award shows?"
Of course. They're looking at a teleprompter. You can see on the teleprompter, you're getting those words.
Exactly. And they say, "Well, what do you write exactly? Do you write the acceptance speeches?" I say, "No, that's the only thing I don't write is the acceptance speeches. That has to come out of the winner's mouth, obviously. But I write, coming up next, Madonna, Rihanna, that kind of stuff." So you have like all this interstitial stuff that actually is written by somebody. You don't think it is. Anything the presenter is saying at the podium when they come out, "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Robert Downey Jr." And then he comes out and says something. Well, I may have written that, and I'm standing in the wings with him just before he goes on stage to review the text so that he knows how to pronounce people's names. And so I'm working right there with, you name it, everybody, right before they go on stage. And I'll say, "Ooh, you're chewing gum. Can you spit that out?" Whatever. I have this little 5 minutes with them, and then I never see them again sometimes. But it's great. It's a very high adrenaline, exciting feeling. And it's usually live TV or live events, award shows. So there's that extra added pressure and adrenaline. But yeah, so working in the world of unscripted is something a lot of people never talk about or don't know much about, because the focus is so much on writing dramas or writing comedies and spec scripts and everything, which I've done also. But writing
Has writing unscripted TV, especially people inside the industry, has that helped you with getting scripted jobs? Has it helped you? Does it, again, I know it pays the bills, but it also, I think, gives you credibility, right? Especially people that in the know realize
Sure.
you're a writer.
It gives you credibility, but I think the most important thing is it gives you relationships. So,
Okay.
I look at everyone I've worked with or for, and it's a who's who of everyone.
Right.
And everyone is part of an award show ultimately, whether the award show is honoring music, movies, TV, sports, whatever. So you're writing for all these programs. I worked on the Teen Choice Awards, the Billboard Music
Cool.
Awards. There was a show called the Scream Awards on Spike TV for years, which was horror and sci-fi and fantasy TV and film. So there's this wide range of everybody that you end up having FaceTime with. I also worked as the question writer for Ryan Seacrest, Eli from the Red Carpet. So the live from the red carpet shows, all those questions they're asking the celebrities on the red carpet are written by somebody. And I'm spending weeks researching these celebrities, because they actually choose who they're going to interview on the red carpet beforehand. And so it's a big, long, giant process. And you're standing there right next to, Ryan Seacrest or whoever, and they have index cards, and they're like, "Oh, here comes Nicole Kidman." And you have like 3 questions on an index card, and he chooses which one ultimately. I don't write "Who are you wearing?" Okay, but I write all the other ones. Yeah.
What's interesting is I've been a reporter on the red carpet, and I had to think of questions on the fly, and I didn't know who was coming. Sometimes I did, but sometimes I didn't. So I'm very impressed that they're that prepared, and now it makes me feel a little bit more comfortable. Although I know Ryan Seacrest got hit hard with Sasha Cohen when he kind of put dust over him and said it was ashes. So he sort of lost it on that one. He was like, that one, he couldn't plan. You could tell that Ryan plans meticulously. What are some of the I know I can come up with some of the things that make you hireable. Like, for example, you're fun, you're reliable, you're enjoyable to be with. What are some of the other criteria that you believe that allow you to be so hireable?
Well, I think the things you just said are the number one things: to be affable, to be well liked, you know, to be able to make people comfortable, make them laugh. It's not like I'm trying to make people laugh, but if you just click with people, obviously that's going to help generate more work. Um, I don't know if you know this, but I actually had a recurring role on the reality series Hell's Kitchen for several years as Francisco the party planner.
Yes, I do. I do know this story, and you're gonna be blown away that you told me this story 10 years ago, and I still remember. And you said, this is one of the few times where a writer became an actor.
Yeah, so basically, I was just answering phones on a TV show called Celebrity Duets. It was a Fox show, only lasted one
Okay.
season. And so they offered me this role to be Francisco the party planner on Hell's Kitchen. But I was so confused. I said, well, I'm not an actor. Don't I have to audition for a role? And why are you offering me a role on a reality show? Aren't they real? I mean, like I'm playing somebody fake. So I went with it because I basically say yes to everything. And I showed up on set. They said, you make up all your own lines. You know, it's reality. So you just have to like be super sharp and funny.
Right.
And I was kind of nervous because I thought, oh my gosh, there's no takes, there's no cuts. You know, like I just have to be believable as Francisco because everyone on set, no one had any idea I was really Zach. So it was such a hit that they had me return a few seasons after that. You can see these clips on YouTube. It'll haunt me forever, I'm sure. But but it was a lot of fun actually. So I've been on in front of the camera and behind the camera, and then basically every job you can think of in the unscripted world.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah,
Um,
but I really do think being affable will help open doors for you.
and I think people don't, they underrate that ability is one to kind of get their foot in the door and then people to feel comfortable with each of those people.
Hmm.
So I think that that's really, really important. Um, so like if you had a piece of advice for people, what would that be?
My advice would be, I don't want to sound so Mr. Rogersy here. Be a nice person. You will win lots of friends if you are a kind, nice, thoughtful, sincere person. And that sounds very maybe kindergarten-y of me, but I really believe that is the bottom line with getting somewhere, getting anywhere. Do you agree?
Yeah, I agree. I totally agree.
I think you have to be willing to take any job also. You know, I went to Hollywood, I was in my 30s. So I wasn't like a 20-year-old. And I was accepting assistant jobs into my 40s. And so what? Like, I don't, you know, nothing was beneath me. I wanted to work and I wanted to meet people and I wanted to be on set and I wanted to, you know, just be as involved as I could.
One of the things I wanted to talk to you too was to get your thoughts on um, when, how did you first get your job with like Sally?
It was really funny. First of all, I was a big fan of hers all for decades. And then I went to Hollywood with this sort of hope that maybe I could meet her someday. You know, we all have our favorite movie star that we just kind of fantasize about meeting someday. And as fate would have it, she was having an art gallery showing. I didn't even know she was a painter. And I went uninvited. I just showed up and I stood there and she said, young man, she kind of pointed at me and she said, what do you think of my paintings? And I was
Right.
kind of starstruck. I'd never met a star in person before in LA. And I said, and I'm an artist, so I was able to talk about her paintings. And then she said, you're an artist? I said, yes. She said, you're a Virgo. I said, yes. She said, are you my new assistant? And I said, yes. And she said, did God just send you into Sally's life? And I said, I think God just sent us both together, Sally. And she said, ooh, good, you start right now. First, I need you. And then I started being her assistant. And I thought, wow, she doesn't even know my name. Am I being paid? I don't understand. I guess this is my dream job. Is this how you get hired in Hollywood? So, so that's how it happened. I mean, it was almost mystical, but I just feel very grateful actually, because she and I became very good friends. She helped me navigate Hollywood as being an assistant to a celebrity. They get invited to everything, parties and you name it, all this private stuff going on around town that most people don't know about. And so I would go with her to all of these events, private celebrity parties and mansions and things. And through her, I met a wide variety of people. I met Barbara Streisand, who wanted me to be her assistant. They had like a tug of war on me at one point. I met all these, Ridley Scott, who is the guy who directed Chicago? Oh my God. Anyway, it was a great experience being her assistant, but it wasn't why I went to LA. So I needed to get on the right railroad track, so to speak, and get into television. I went out there specifically to work in television, not film, but specifically television. There's so much work to be found in TV. I mean, now more than ever, there's so many networks, and so much.
Somebody's asked me, they want to see if you can take your computer and kind of show us your paintings.
Yes, Bob Marshall. That was the name I was trying to think of.
Yeah.
Paintings, yes, of course. So I'm having an art show in March, and it's a whole show about my father's life. He passed away 2 years ago. But I do mostly watercolor, but here's a piece I did. I don't know if it's gonna show up on the screen here, but it's a large watercolor of birds. And it's all the states he lived in his life. So I have the state birds of Massachusetts, Indiana, Ohio, Florida, California, and Maine. So these are the states he lived in, and I did the state flowers and the birds. So it's all like a garden of everywhere he lived in this watercolor, which is a really large painting, actually.
That's amazing. It's really beautiful.
I'm painting and drawing all the time. I have a very complicated piece actually right behind this. Let me show you. I have a home in Maine and a home in Florida. I'm actually in Florida right now. And I can fly up and down the East Coast back and forth. Usually I'm up in Maine in the warmer months and Florida in the colder months. But this is a collage that I did, and I do a lot of mixed media, and it's very complex and many, many layers. Do I have other pieces of art around? I must. Well, I have this is my home here, but I work from home, but I also have a studio in downtown Vero Beach, which is the town in Florida where I live. And I love going into my art studio. It's like a pure creative space. I also have a huge art library of art books.
Now Valerie asked, and she's an alumni, I've been with Sherwood Oaks for quite some time. She asked, like in a typical scripted show, there's a writer's room, and she wanted to know, do you collaborate with other writers? Like, is there a writer's room?
There is. There's a writer's room for every award show. And there are A-list award show writers like Bruce Valanche. Dave Boone writes the Tonys every year. He's an acquaintance of mine. John Max, he wrote Hollywood Squares, and he also writes a lot of like the Academy Awards, the Golden Globes. So these writers' rooms are tough to get in. You have to be funny, you have to know the right people, but you can get in them. And it's just as exciting as any comedy or drama writer's room, because you're sitting there with the host, whether it be Neil Patrick Harris or Jimmy Kimmel or Jimmy Fallon or whoever, and you're riffing with them and you're bouncing ideas off of them. And there's a lot of hilarity and laughter going on, a lot of obscene humor going on. And it's a fun, exciting environment. And it feels so good when someone laughs at one of your jokes you're pitching. Um, and it feels so good when you write a piece for the award show, because everyone's assigned different sections of the show. Same with reality shows. You are sitting there with a room full of people coming up with the scenarios for the show, the outline. You might not be scripting on a reality show. You might not be scripting every single thing they're saying because they want them to come up with their own words. But sometimes you will. And sometimes you will come up with a scene or an outline idea for the show.
That's what I hear mostly. That's what Larry David said. He'll come up with a idea, and then everyone has to come back and kind of improvise a particular words. So he's not stuck on a word. He's just like, okay, I want so-and-so to do X, Y, and Z. And it's interesting because Mark Burnett said when he did Survivor, and it was shocking, he said he would take, I don't know what he'd say, like 200 hours of videos, and he'd turn it into 40 minutes. And so he said, we'd look at all this footage and decide what a story is, and then pull those pieces out. This person's crying, this person, and then slide it together. And he said, I never use the word reality because it's so far from reality, but it's just
far from reality. I call it manufactured reality.
Okay, that's a good.
It's not quite reality, believe me. But anyway, I'm seeing some questions here on the sidelines. Can I answer them?
Yes, please. The one person was talking about, James was saying, what's the best piece of advice? And Mark was asking privately, he's like, what's an approach to networking that you do during the pandemic?
Well, that's really good. I mean, networking during the pandemic, you're limited. So I have turned a lot more to Facebook, Instagram, calling people. There's nothing like, calling people. People right now, all of my Hollywood executive producer friends, they're working mostly from home. And so they're a little more available and accessible. And so
I've noticed that too.
Yeah, so I can call them and shoot the breeze a little bit, and they're happy to hear from me. It's such a weird year. I mean, I hope that this is an unusual year in our lives, that next year things will kind of swing back to normal gradually. So it's especially weird for me right now because I directed my first feature film, like I said, last year in Los Angeles. Thank God we wrapped it. We wrapped it exactly a year ago. So I've been in editing this entire year with my editor in Studio City on the West Coast and myself here living on the East Coast, and us being unable to be together. I don't even feel comfortable flying out there and staying out there. So I've just worked remotely from Florida with he in Studio City, but it's very slow going. But it's moving, slowly but surely. But because film festivals a lot of them have been canceled this year, we're just moving with our best foot forward into the new year. Hopefully we'll have a Cannes, and we'll have Tribeca, and we'll have all the things that we need to have for our film industry.
So somebody asked about Sallywood, and they said they wanted to hear more about it. And I think it's kind of like, did you come up with that concept? Did you approach Sally Kirkwood? I love her. I met her as I told you, both of us are mutual friends with Susan Johnston, who did
That's right.
Film Festival.
That's right.
And I've been on her, I think for the last 7 years, I've been her main reporter at her film festival. And again, it's all relationships, helping out. And then when we were there, it's so funny. Sally comes up to me. I have to tell you the story, sister. Sally comes up to me and she said, I want to interview with you. And I said, why'd you pick out me? And she goes, because you seem the best, most professional. I go, oh, that's sweet. And then I said, why are you here? She goes, because I'm friends with Susan. And she said, why are you here? And I said, because I'm friends with Susan. So it's all about, as you say, the relationships.
It is. So basically, here's how Sally would happen for me. I was never a film writer. I had never written a screenplay by myself. I had written short film scripts, and of course, I'd written a lot of television. But I was at a birthday party in Beverly Hills at a friend of mine's birthday party, and she said, "Zach, get up and tell a funny story for the room." We were all kind of getting up and telling funny stories one by one, but make it funny. And I said, okay. I said, I'll tell you about the time I got him hired by Sally Kirkland to be her assistant and what happened. So basically, I told this story and the room was laughing. And this woman comes up to me at the end of the story and she said, "That's the funniest story I've ever heard. And I want that for my next movie." And I said, "Well, who are you?" And she's British and pretty and cute and blonde. And she said, "Well, my name is Julia and I'm a film producer. I live in England and I produce big budget English dramas with Helen Mirren and Ray Fiennes and people like that. I don't do small budget, but I think I'd like to take on this film, this," and I'm listening to her thinking, what film? Like, I just told a story at a party. And she said, "Send me the screenplay. Here's my business card." And I said, "Well, there is no screenplay." She said, "Write it, darling, and send it to me." So I went, "Oh, okay." So I go home and I write "Fade In." I just wrote the screenplay basically as I lived it. I didn't even outline it. I wrote it in 3 months, which was very fast. I remember I finished on St. Patrick's Day,
Wow.
2015. And I sent it to her and she read it. It was basically a first draft and she read it and loved it. And she said, "This is hilarious. We're going to make this. I'm going to find the funding. We're going to make this in Hollywood. You're going to star as yourself." And I said, "I don't want to star as myself." I said, "I'd rather get like a 25-year-old to play me who's like, a hot young actor." And she said, "Oh, okay." I said, "I'm fine with being the writer." Now, at that point, I wasn't going to direct because I'd never directed anything before. But I said, "Let's find a director." So we were interviewing people to direct, and none of them were really quite right. And but things were moving along. Sally agreed to do it. And then I decided one day when I moved to Florida, because my father had Alzheimer's disease and I was taking care of him as his caregiver, and I was kind of going stir crazy. I don't know if there's anybody out there watching who's a caregiver of someone ill, but ooh, it takes its toll on you. So I said, I want to take one of my short film scripts and direct it and just make it locally here in Florida. I've had all these great short film scripts sitting on a shelf and none of them I've ever do it. And I saved some money. I'd rather make a short film script than buy a car. And I'm just going to take that money and make a short film. So I did that. I made a 10-minute comedy short film with a crew and cast that didn't even know what they were doing, most of them. Like this was low budget. And it came out really nicely. And I submitted it on a whim to the Cannes Film Festival in France, and it was accepted. And I almost had a heart attack. I thought when I got the acceptance letter that it was a mistake. I thought, well, maybe this was meant for someone else. I can't possibly have been accepted to Cannes. But it was, and that changed everything. And then suddenly everyone was looking at me as this credible, viable director. And they said, "Well, you're going to direct Sallywood now." And I went, "I am? Okay. What better person to direct it than me, since it's about my life?" And I wrote it, and yes, you're right. I'm going to direct this now. So it just kind of magically, organically came to be. I never pitched it, so to speak. I never consciously was pounding the pavement to make this film. But
I think I want to bring up, Zach, that
yeah,
one of the things Gary Shusett said is that things happen organically, and when people push and shove, it usually doesn't work. And one of the things I think that's great about you is one of the things that I show people is to be modest and humble to a certain extent, to be out there, but to be modest and humble rather than saying, "I did this, I got this done." You're into sort of approaching things in a way that allows people to be very open and not put off, if that makes any sense. Because I know a lot of the people out there will kind of push back on issues. that normally, so.
Yeah, no, I understand that too. I mean, I know firsthand from pounding the pavement in Hollywood trying to get staffed on a show, you sometimes feel like you're pounding your head against a wall. And even if you have a manager, it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be working. You know, you can write the greatest scripts and even win contests. I was winning contests and I was, you know, making all sorts of great relationships and still not getting hired in the jobs I wanted to be hired on, which was being staffed on, like, you know, 6 Feet Under or Grey's Anatomy or one of these shows that I was watching and writing spec scripts about. But I ended up on this other track and it was just fine. Actually, ended up getting into the TV Academy as a voting member.
That's
Um,
awesome.
I ended up, you know, I worked a lot with Sherwood Oaks and coming to your programs, and that was phenomenal. I remember one day Gary Shusett brought me to meet J.J. Abrams in his
Yeah.
office. And I don't know if you were there, maybe you were, but there was a group of like 10 of us sitting there around the table with JJ, and I, you know, and I was a big fan of Alias at the time. That was like his hot show.
Yeah.
So this is going back a few years, but just I just kind of was a sponge taking it all in.
What's amazing is in January 2006, uh, I remember when he said, make sure you get a picture with JJ. And I said, well, why? And he said, because he will be the most powerful director of all times. And I said, how do you know? And I think what's interesting is he has now secured the highest paying director ever. You
I
know,
think
he
you're
gets
right.
whatever treatment he
I think
wants.
you're right.
I think it's like $250 million. Don't quote me on the exact amount, but it was close to $250 million contract. And his whole thing has a similar personality and feel as you do. He's competent, but he's not off-putting in any way. He's very likable. And
Very
he just,
likable.
yeah. And he's really smart. He when people work with him, it's like you're on a team. You don't ever feel like you're working for him. It's like you're working together. It's so
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah, I like that. That's the way it should be, quite frankly. So Sally Wood attracted some really great actors that were reading my script. That I found two producers: the British one, who I told you about at the party, and then an LA producer named Stephen J. Wolfe, who produced 500 Days of Summer and a bunch of indie comedy films that I like very much. So I was honored and thrilled when he came aboard. And through those producers, I ended up with Jennifer Tilly playing my mother. Because remember, this is an autobiographical story. And I thought, Jennifer Tilly is playing my mother? Oh my God, this is unbelievable. And we have, who else is in the movie? Keith Carradine, Michael Lerner, Eric Roberts, Maria Conchita Alonso, Kay Lenz, a bunch of fantastic up and coming actors, and Sally Kirkland playing herself. Who am I forgetting? Oh gosh. Well, anyway, so it's a really good cast for a movie that is a very small budget. This is not the budget of, you know, James Cameron. This is a very small budget. So, but we did it, and it's coming together. It looks really good.
That's awesome. I think, there's so many good movies out there that are lower budget and they win a ton of awards. I'm sure you're gonna be on that. I think of Transamerica was a $1 million film. It won the
Right.
Independent Spirit Awards, which are basically, for those that don't know, that's the award show, like the Academy Awards for all films under 15 million.
And and it happens the day before the Oscars. I
That
would like for Sally Wood to be in that game.
that
You
would be
know,
awesome.
in Spirit
That'd
Awards.
be
Yeah.
awesome. And I
Sure,
and I see
Sally
some,
Kirkland's performance in the film is great. Oh, it's phenomenal. All of them are, actually. I mean, I feel like the world needs warm-hearted comedies. This is the film I think the world will embrace in the next year.
that's awesome.
I hope you see it, Christine. I hope it makes you laugh.
Yeah, I'm sure it will. You do. I remember when on Gary Shusett, we had a couple minutes, and the one person in the audience, I said, "Come up and say a few words. I'll make a laugh." That's you, and I picked you out. And
Thank you.
it's
Thank
just
you so
something
much.
that always that's very enduring. We only have a couple minutes left, and then
Mhm.
we have our next guest coming on. But what the question I'm getting from people is kind of what's the best advice you have specifically for those that are over 50 that are trying to get into Hollywood? What's the best kind of advice that you could give?
Well, I'm over 50 now myself, even though I don't feel it.
Well, you
I
don't
don't
look
feel like
it.
I look it.
No, you look young. And I
Yes,
think that's part of it, right? It's having that energy.
yeah, I'm 51, okay? So I'm just over 50. But here I am, basically starting a whole new chapter in my life as a film director. I don't want Sallywood to be my last film. I want it to be the first of many more. And I think like basically take your age, whatever it is, and just put it away. Like who cares? Just like be your full creative self. And there is a quote that I love, which is be bold and mighty forces will come to your aid. And I heard that early on when I moved to Hollywood. And I think there's some real truth in that. Um, I think that you can't be afraid. Fear is the primary enemy of creativity. So don't try not to let fear rule you. You've got to just like do it, go for it, and try and forget that you're 51 or 61 or whatever age you are. There's so many stories. The list is so long of people later in life who scored big, and yeah, you're
Well,
alive. You're in the game.
it's interesting you say, because I help with another nonprofit, the American Red Cross, and Clara Barton actually started that organization at age 60. So and it's going to be 130 years old.
Mhm.
So actually Sherwood Oaks is turning 50 next year. So I think a lot of times you look and I think age is just such a number, it's just another number. It's one factor, but I've seen people who have actually gone off and become are so athletic, they become police officers at 55 that at 25 and they can run down a 25-year-old because they're in great shape. So
Yeah.
um it's fantastic. Thank you so much for
Oh
coming.
my gosh. Thank you
We'll have
guys.
you come
Thank you
again. And
so
if you'd
much.
like,
And
you can listen in on our next presenter that's coming on.
I'm on Facebook. I'm on Instagram. Xaque Gruber. I hope they have the spelling of my name, XaQueGruber.
Yeah.
I'm an open-hearted, good person. I want to help whoever I can. So thank you,
You've done
Chris.
so much for by the way, for both your parents. It's very heartwarming.
Yeah, thanks a lot. It's
I know
honestly,
you've done a lot for your mom as well, and
yeah,
you headed back from LA to help her out, and
I
it's just
did.
very heartwarming.
I never thought I'd live in Florida, by the way, you guys. I thought I'd be living in LA forevermore, but life threw me a curveball. I ended up in Florida, but it's worked out just fine. I go to LA for work when I need to, it's called airplanes.
Yeah,
So, yeah.
that's awesome. Thank you so much for coming. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Christine. Thank you.
You're
Thank you,
awesome.
everybody.